Hey guys, what's going on? We got another beta video here. This time we are going to go over the elemental talents. If you didn't know, elemental got a new rework as well as the shaman class tree got a rework. So we're going to go over those. If you don't know who I am or what I do, normally I am enhancement. I do dabble in both elemental and resto shaman, but yeah, I play at a fairly average level of enhancement, doing mythic raiding, doing mythic keys and arenas as well. And I do the very similar with elemental and resto. But yeah, so let's get into the talent changes. So as you can see on the right side and the left side, some things have changed. I'm not going to go too in depth with the left side just because it hasn't changed too much. But the one thing is they've reduced a lot of talents down to one tier talents, or pardon me, one rank talents, as well as putting in some new defensives such as Stone Bulwark right here, and Ancestral Guidance is in a bit of a weirder place, as well as a bit more imbuement buffs and defensive buffs, Wind Rush Totem being in a better place, Seasoned Winds, a new elemental resistance, and a bit of self-healing from Healing Surge. So all in all, really good changes in the class tree. I'm super excited for them all. The only weird one is that totemic focus, it buffs every totem, but it doesn't do anything for stone bulwark. So I'm not sure if that's a plan in the future or something. But anyways, let's get into the class tree. So there are two different builds. Obviously, you have Fire, which revolves more around Farseer, and then you have Storm, which revolves around your other version, which is Stormbringer. As for right now, I find the Farseer with Fire is a bit more fluid, a bit feel better, and stuff like that. But yeah, so let's start off with the first thing that they changed. As you notice, your very first Capstone has a choice node. You can now choose between Earthshock and Elemental Blast, which is honestly one of the best things I thought of, or not thought of, I thought they could have done. The reason why is because before it would be like down here or something, and you would just lose Earth Shock for Elemental Blast. Why not just make it a choice node? And that's what they did. And it's honestly a great idea. I'm so glad they came up with it and did that because I think it makes it a lot nicer and you can build around it as well. So I think it's a great idea. And the other best thing, which I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, is that they have a choice node for Earthquake. And you're probably wondering, well, what's the difference? Like, does one stun and one not? No, actually, they made it so a lot of people, you have a macro to probably place it down instantly for you at your cursor location. Well, now they give you a choice node to choose whether to place it at your target's location. So if you're targeting someone and you drop it, it will center it around them and you won't have to do anything. Or you can have it to where you can place it and they just do the exact same thing. There's no difference. That is the only change. And I didn't even think they would do this, but they did it and I can't believe it. It's awesome. Um, but yeah, so we're going to go down the left side first. As you can see, I have a little bit here, but we'll go over the left side and then we'll go down the center and then we'll go down the right side. So first off, we have Flash of Lightning, kind of similar to what it used to be, where you would get a bit of Chain Lightning and Lightning Bolt damage, as well as reduce the cooldown of nature spells. Nothing too crazy, nothing too different from before. But then you see a familiar icon, Ice Fury. What has changed? Lava Burst has a chance to turn Frost Shock into Ice Fury. Ice Fury does the exact same thing, except it only applies to 2 Frost Shocks and does a little bit less damage. And the reason why is because it's instant cast now. So as soon as you proc it, you can press it and it just sends it out. So this change is honestly amazing. Um, I never thought of this being a thing at all. I thought Ice Fairy would always be a cast of some sort and stuff like that, but no, it is instant cast, but it does a bit less damage, and I think it generates a lot less Maelstrom, but it flows a lot nicer with the spec. On top of that, they've added an additional talent, Fusion of Elements. So after you Ice Fury, once you cast a nature and a fire spell, so let's say you Earth Shock and then Lava Burst, you then send out an Elemental Blast at 60% effectiveness, whether or not you have Earth Shock or Ele Blast activated. doesn't matter. It will always be an elemental blast. I think this is amazing. It's a really cool synergy. It just adds into elementals constant spell weaving and just slamming instant cast spells. It honestly makes it feel really really good. And then you still have your flux melting, increasing your lava burst damage. This just flows a lot nicer now since Ice Fury is instant cast and you don't have to worry too much about it. It really does flow really well. Then you have Storm Frenzy. Your next Chain Lightning and Lightning Bolt has a 40% reduced cast time after casting Earth Shock, Elemental Blast, or Earthquake, and accumulate 2 charges. This is really, really good for AoE and Storm builds. I think this is great because it just allows you to generate even more Maelstrom so much faster, and it flows really well with your Surge of Power too, getting those quick lightning bolts off or massive chain lightnings in those big groups. It really, really, I think this is an amazing talent. Now, I am no expert in Elemental, so I'm just going off of how it feels for me and how I've always played it. Now, Elemental Equilibrium has received a slight nerf, but also a slight buff. It's no longer a 2 rank talent, it is a 1 rank, but it is 10% damage increase rather than 7 and 15. So it's a slight nerf, but also a buff because you only have to spend 1 talent point on it. Your next one is Eye of the Maelstrom, still does the same thing, reducing your spenders. The big one here, in my opinion, is Mountains Will Fall. It's in a much, much better spot. Uh, Basically, Earthshock, Elemental Blast, and Earthquake have a chance to overload, 50% effectiveness, same as before. And then you have Great Sunderings down here, which I think flows really well with Mountains Will Fall. It honestly just makes sense that it should be a capstone like point there for me. It flows well with your maelstroms, and it makes sense you would want to try and overload it as much as possible. And since we're on the topic of overload and mastery, there is a big, big change with the mastery, which we will get into right now. So, what is that change? Well, we now get all elemental damage and physical damage buff at all times for your mastery points. And on top of that, you still get your overloads, but they are much, much weaker. They're only 35% rather than the 75 to 100%. And I believe even with the echo chamber, I think it goes down to 25%. So keep that in mind that the overloads are weaker, but your overall damage is increased, so mastery can scale past 100. And I mean, I think the overload is still very, very valuable. It still generates Maelstrom. I think that was the point in general, is to basically give you a bit more Maelstrom in general. But yeah, I think this is an amazing change just because it's a flat damage increase now rather than a chance to do increased damage. It is a slight nerf, but I think overall it will be a buff, especially later on when you start scaling mastery, and it makes mastery a bit more valuable in a sense. So, yeah, that was kind of a crazy change that I didn't realize until later on. But let's go down the center because we have a lot of talents to go down the center. So we still got our typical Elemental Fury. Then we got our Surge of Power with Aftershock, still doing the same thing. Surge of Power buffs your next spell. Aftershock has a chance to refund all your Maelstrom. And then you got Unrelenting Calamity, same thing, reduce cast time and increase Earthquake. Then you have Primordial Fury. Elemental Fury increases the critical strike damage by an additional 25%. So instead of just doing 250% now, we do 275%. So that's a huge buff. We still have Flow of Power and Swelling Maelstrom, just giving us that extra, just doing the same thing as before. But then we have some interesting changes here. So we have Lightning Conduit. While Earth Shield is active, your nature damage dealt is increased by 8%. So this is a very good buff to our Storm builds, where you're spamming Chain Lightning or Lightning Bolt and stuff like that. So it's very good that they incorporated Lightning Shield into it. I really like that because Lightning Shield hasn't quite seen any love lately, and I mean it's been a part of Shaman forever, and I always thought it would be interesting because we used to have Fulmination with it, where you would stack Lightning Shield up and then explode with a big old Earth Shock and stuff like that. So It's nice to see Lightning Shield come into play a little bit again. Then we still have our Power of the Maelstrom, although it is slightly weaker due to the change to the Mastery, but at the same time, it might get adjusted. Who knows? I mean, these are all numbers that just have to get changed. But at the same time, I mean, it's a passive extra um, overload, so that means more Maelstrom and stuff like that. And then we still have our improved Flame Tongue, which I don't believe gets buffed by enhanced imbues. I haven't quite confirmed it, but I don't think it does. I think this affects the initial attack. Like if you were to whack somebody with Flame Tongue, it would increase that by 30%. I think this is just something else entirely, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I don't know. But then we have another one. We have Thunderstrike Ward. So this allows you to buff your shield, granting you a, pardon me, giving Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning a chance to call down 2 Thunderstrikes on your target for a bit of damage. So this is basically just a shield buff to give your lightning spells a chance to do a little bit of extra damage. It's kind of nice to see. I know Resto Shaman also got a shield because I believe they found it a little weird that enhancement gets 2 imbuements, but these two don't. At the same time, I don't know. But it's nice to see them doing an imbuement for shields now. So I find that very interesting. Even though it is a very minor thing, I think just the passive damage from it is just massive and it just gives you an imbuement. I think that's a really cool idea. Then we still have Echo Chamber, which has been reduced down to a one rank talent. Sorry, and honestly, it does the same thing. So it just makes it a bit easier to grab. Searing Flames, same thing. Flame Shock generates Maelstrom. And then we get down to the bigger picture. We got Ascendance. As you can see, it's not a choice node anymore. So it's an actual cooldown that we use, which is massive. So I'm glad to see that coming back because it did feel terrible having to fish for those Ascendance procs. I'm sure everybody can agree. It felt really, really bad. Well, not necessarily bad, but it felt awkward, especially when you're in Mythic Plus and the pack's about to die and you send out that lava burst and you proc and you're like, well, great, there goes my Ascendance proc. I wish it could have waited one more lava burst. So it is what it is. But now we actually have a cooldown to use other than our elementals, so that's super duper exciting. And you can see even more coming, but we're gonna shift over to Stormkeeper. It got moved into an interesting spot, a final tier spot, which I think is more deserving for Stormkeeper. Before it was around up here in the second tier, but now it's in the final tier, which I think makes more sense because it is a big button. It used to be our artifact weapon. So I do agree with its positioning, and it does have a couple choice nodes. So yeah, nothing has changed with it other than it did get slight nerf due to overload or mastery change. So very, very slight nerf, but I think it's still, the same thing. We'll see what happens when they do any form of tuning. And then we have a new talent here called Echo of the Elements. You might remember this from BFA, where you used to have a Azerite power, or yeah, one of your gear slots. It was when your elemental finished, it left behind a lesser elemental, giving you 15 seconds of extra little bit of damage. So it's come back, and it is strong. So I like to see this. It is cool, giving you a little bit of extra feed, not just a huge fall off when your elemental goes away. And then we got the big question: what's under Ascendance? Well, we have the first one, reducing Ascendance cooldown by 60 seconds. Originally, we had this in Dragonflight, but now it's been changed a little bit because it used to give a bit of a different thing. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, just a flat cooldown reduction from Ascendance, 60 seconds. So instead of a 3 minute, it is now a 2 minute. Or you can have it to your haste is increased by 25% while Ascendance is active, and its duration is increased by 3 seconds. So this is huge because when you're ascended, you get this big, almost half a bloodlust effect. So that's pretty sick to me. I really do like it. It's basically they incorporated even further beyond from Dragonflight into these choice notes, and then you get into your deeply rooted elements. I know I kind of skipped. I was supposed to go left, right, but I couldn't wait. Deeply Rooted Elements is now, so now you get but everything here, and it's honestly just it's it looks amazing. I'm so excited to try this out. Um, but then activating Stormkeeper summons a powerful lightning elemental to fight by your side for 8 seconds. This is very, very interesting. I haven't fully tested it to see how well the elemental does, but I find this really, really cool just because when you Stormkeeper, you get another elemental. I think that's pretty awesome. Gives it a bit of a buff as well as just an extra effect, you know. And then we have Skybreaker's Fiery Demise back. If you don't remember, this was a legendary back in Shadowlands, where Flame Shock reduced the cooldown of your Fire Elemental and Storm Elemental, and it increased its critical chance. So this is great that it's not a choice node with Windseeker's whatever resurgence, which has been removed. So we no longer get our constant procs of Lava Burst from just spamming Earthshock, Lava Burst, Earthshock, Lava Burst, which I am kind of okay with because it did seem a little bit overpowered in my opinion, just sitting there spamming those two spells. But yeah, this is super exciting to see. It's in a super good spot too. And then we got Primal Elementalist. It's in a much better spot. It used to be on a choice node with our happy little liquid magma totem, but now they have been split up, which I am so excited about. And then we also have Lightning Rod, which is wasn't really ever used. I believe the only time it was used was Dragonflight Season 2. So that's when we had our Stormkeeper proc and stuff like that. So it's interesting to see it in a much better spot. And we'll have to see how it works with Tempest and stuff like that. So I haven't fully tested everything out. But onto the right side of the tree, we got our Fire Elemental, and then we got our Storm Elemental as well. So those haven't changed. Then we got Echo of Elements. As you know, this used to be a second tier talent. It was right around here, um, giving Lava Burst an additional charge. I still find it really, really weird that we have two of them. We have 3 charges of Element or Lava Burst. Although, with the removal of Windspeaker's Resurgence, I think having 3 charges is kind of okay, but it also seems a bit overkill to me at times. But hey, I I can't really complain. It's just a free talent. And then we got our Master of Elements here. And if you probably haven't noticed yet, Lava Surge in Dragonflight was a talent, but it is now baseline. So we no longer have to worry about taking a talent to proc our Lava Burst free cast. So that is one of the best changes they could have ever done because I found it really, really silly that you had to talent into that effect. But anyways, on to the next one. We got Elemental Unity. While Storm Elemental is active, you get nature damage. While Fire Ellie is active, you get fire damage. So this is really, really cool. Just giving a bit of an extra buff while your Elemental is up, making it an even stronger cooldown, synergizing very, very well with Ascendance and Stormkeeper as well. So I think that is an amazing talent. And then we go down here, we got Everlasting Elements, increasing the duration of the elementals. And then we have our Flames of Cauldron, buffing our Flame Shock a bit better. Then we have Earthern Rage back. So if you don't remember what Earthern Rage was, I believe I think it was Legion. It was either Legion or Shadowlands, maybe both of them, that Earthern Rage was actually our mastery, where our mastery would buff this damage effect, but now it's just a passive. I believe it was our mastery. Could have just been one of the talents. I don't quite remember, but I believe it was a mastery at some point, which I really like to see it coming back because it was a nice little power, just a passive power buff. You know what I mean? It just deals damage. So to me, Elemental is a rapid fire cannon just spitting spells out, and this honestly makes me feel like it adds to that. I don't know. That's my opinion on it. But then we go down and we got Primordial Wave. We're keeping this baby. This is one of I think every Elemental Shaman's favorite spells. Maybe not so much favorite, but I think it's really good for Elemental, where you just spitting out a bunch of lava bursts at everybody. I love seeing that. It's always a good show, and then especially when you proc Ascendance right after, great. So I'm glad to see it stayed. And then we got Magma Chamber, still doing the same thing, but it's a 1-tier talent now. Every time Flame Shock ticks, it gives more damage to your Maelstrom spenders. And then we still have our Splintered Elements, giving us haste after we use Primordial Wave. And we got our Liquid Magma Totem to top everything all off. So, my thoughts overall, uh, this tree looks amazing. This is the fire build. I did kind of do up a storm build. Let's see if it'll play through. Okay, it still does. I did mess around with it a little bit, but as I've said before, I am not a amazing elemental shaman, so I don't quite know how to do the build super properly. I think I got the fire one down pretty well, but the storm one I think could probably change. But we'll have to see. It still relies a bit on the lava burst procs, but at the same time, to me, the storm should be about spamming lightning bolt or chain lightning and stuff like that, and then earthquakes and earth shock and stuff. So this is my take on the storm build, which I think could work pretty well, especially if you love spamming chain lightning like I do. I love seeing all those lightning going everywhere. It's always fun. But yeah, that is it for the changes. Um, please let me know your thoughts on everything that Elemental has changed. I think Blizzard has done a wonderful job with this. It looks amazing. It kind of reaches to everyone. There's no 2-tier talents, which I think is great, or 2 ranked talents, because I think it just allows you to move around the tree much more freely and grab, a bit more different spells and maybe mix match a bit better. So, yeah, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. I believe this is a very, very good, and yeah. But anyways, guys, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Laters!